So now let's understand the concept of the kinship system. So specifically, right now we are covering the second part of the optional, that is sociology paper 2, which is a kinship system. I definitely know there is a kingship system also exists in the in general. The kingship system we have to study in the paper 1 of the sociology, but right now we are focusing more on the kingship system of India. So we'll understand this and we'll try to approach the answers accordingly for the optional. Okay, so let's now directly go into this topic. See, so kinship system, when we talk about the kinship is it's a not group where they share a common ancestor, they share the common tradition, or they share the common culture. Those is called as a kinship. Now, in the kingship also, there are various terms like lineage, there is a descent. So let's first understand this. Okay, so lineage is based upon the inheritance, what which inheritance is chosen, it is based on that. Lineage is that. So like example, there is a patrilineage or there is a matrilineage. And lineage refers to particularly a group in which a member of a group's same they share the same ancestor whose identity is known, or the body of people arranged together on the basis of the blood lineage. Next is a descent. In case of a descent, we have to understand the principle whereby a child is socially affiliated with a group of his or own parents. Like classical anthropologists, uh, s- classical anthropologist refers that patrilineal determining the descent through the male line, and matrilineal determining the descent through the female line. Right? A lineage can also be further divided into two parts, that is a unilineal and non-unilineal. Now, beginning with the lineage and descent system in India, see, socialist structure in India is influenced by the cultural principles. We know this, right? And which is propagated by what? It is propagated by the social institution like lineage and kinship. These are the social institution within our society. Its significance is studied by the various scholars like Kuroswamy, G.S. Gure, um, I.P. Desai. There is I.P. Desai, Iravate Karve, who's the student of the G.S. Gure only. So but this studies has been a study through what they have used the concept like vansh, kul, gotra, to study the kinship system in India, because India itself consists of a diversity, and as well as in a religious culturally manner. In that same way, kinship system also varies across the country. If you go to the northeast, there is different side of kinship system. If you go to the northern India, different type of kinship system. If you go to the south India, and if you go to the west India, or rather the central India, not west India, you will find a different type of kinship system patterns. Now, in general, right now we'll first talk about the what is vansh, kul, and gotra. All right. So vansh is a consanguineous. Consanguineous means it's a relation by the relation of the father and mother through which we came by, right? It's a blood relation. So the blood relation is consanguineous, unilateral, descent group, and it traces its common ancestor. In the vansh, we trace a common ancestor, whereas in kul, lineage traces. Kul refers to lineage, which traces the worship which worships the common mythological ancestor. And gotra, you must understand here, gotra is basically a unified concept. Basically, okay, it is it unifies the every other tribes and the caste within the gotra. Like example, gotra is a unique lineage. It's a unique lineage concept which is appropriated by the concept of clan. For example, like marriage within this and the other obligation, there are certain obligation also in the gotra, that the marriage within the gotra is prohibited. Example, let's say Sangwan Gotra. Okay, so Sangwan Gotra came from a man named Sangu, and which is believed that all the descendant of the Sangwans are from the Sangu. So, which is to be understood here, which is an obligation within the Gotra, that Sangwan Gotra cannot marry each other in the same Gotra. So, this is what the Vansh, Kul, and Gotra. On this very basis, um, the kinship system is being studied into the India. Now, moving ahead, we'll now talk about in India. See, in India, the patrilineage is most dominant form of deciding lineage. We know that, but the other prominent important form which is also practiced is also the matrilineage, which also exists in the Tharavada system of Kerala. Because in South India, specifically in among the in Kerala, there is a Tharavada system. In the Tharavada system, the lineage is decided through the mother. That is a matrilineage. So that itself is one of the very distinct feature of our kinship system, which we barely notice in some other country. Beginning with that, uh, uh, moving ahead to that, practice of the maintaining this genealogical register. Other is the practice of maintaining the genealogical register. For example, the Brahmanical priest keeps records that can trace the lineage as far as the 20th century back. This is practiced in Hinduism. So this itself is one of the most distinct feature. Other is that. Now see, according to Gure considers that cutting across the caste line or the Gotra is universal in India. Gotra is basically a source of also consider, as I said, it is also a source of unification and division also. And Gure says kinship is a cutting across the caste line, cutting across the caste line. Kuroswamy, according to Kuroswamy, rule of marriage is determined by the doctrine of the Kul and Gotra. This is very important. You can write this. You can also refer this statement in your answers also, which will be very helpful in a term, in a sense. A person is a Gotra is a person. A Gotra, a person is prohibited to marry 5 generation. This is very important. Okay, a person is prohibited to marry a 5 generation from the mother's side and 7 generation from the father's side. This principle is called as a principle of Sapinda, and principle of Sapinda is what prohibits to marry a person 5 generation from the mother's side and 7 generation from the father's side. T.N. Madan also tells that in his study of the Kashmiri Pandit's family and kinship, which indicated that the entire community gets related to each other on the basis of the primary, secondary, and tertiary kinship systems. This is what the inferences that he drove from his study of the Kashmiri Pandits. The very important thing is that now changes in the lineage and descent. Okay, so earlier it is used to be a large joint family. Now there is a intercaste and inter-religion marriage, rise of nuclear family, religious conversions, etc. These are the changes that we see in the lineage and the descent systems in India. Whereas now talk about the kinship system, types of kinship system. See, type of kinship system has been promulgated. This idea is promulgated by the various scholars, but we'll talk about in general right now. See, a group of people or the set of people which is recognized by the relatives, which is recognized as a relatives by the virtue of blood, by the virtue of marriage, or by the adoption, they are called as a this system is known as a kinship system. There are two types of kin: affinal kin, conjugal kin. We must understand this very clearly. Okay, this concept has to be set in your minds very clearly. That is affinal kin and the conjugal kin. See, conjugal kin, it is based on the marriage, based on the blood relationship. This is a conjugal kin. Affinal kin, which is by the adoption. So, in the case of adoption or in the case of marrying a woman, it is an affinal bond. But the conjugal bond is not the marriage, but the adoption is through the affinal kin. That relationship is known as the affinal kin, and the conjugal kin is based upon the marriage. So, after marrying, the descendant is going to be promulgated or it gets spreads across. Then this is concept is known as a conjugal kin. Well, this is about a general type of two types of kin. However, classification on the basis of the descent method. See, there are basically classification we see. One is a patrilineal kin. It is a decent criteria to. It is a decent criteria. Decent criteria is exclusively to men only in the patrilineage kin, which is also known as a agnatic. Matrilineal kin, which is also known as uterine. Matrilineal kin, which is a decent criteria exclusively to the female only. But if both patri and matrilineal is included, then such kinship group is called as a bilateral group. We can find these three types of descent which is practiced across India. But yes, specifically to the some part. Well, Moving ahead, according to Murdoch, two type of kinship. He says there are two type of kinship. So right now we have discussed three basic types of kins. Okay, this is the third we are discussing, which is which is which is which is which is proposed by Murdoch. He says there are two types of there are two terms of in two terms there is a kinships. Number one is a term of address and term of reference. In the term of address, culturally patterned individual relationships, and term of references linguistic symbols which is involved in the relationship. This is right. Now moving ahead, there is also one more thing, that the classification on the basis of degree of kinship. So there is a primary kin, secondary kin, and tertiary kin. In the primary kin, which includes the relative very close like father, son, sister, brother, uh, and his spouse. In the secondary includes the successor of the primary, which means that the successor of this primary kin is the secondary kin. Like example, the grandmother, grandfather, maternal uncle, paternal uncle, these are the secondary kins. And the last one is the tertiary kin, which is the secondary of the primary kin or the primary of the secondary kin. Like mother's sister, husband, father's brothers, father's sister's husband. So these are the tertiary kins. Okay, these three you have to understand: primary kin, secondary kin, and tertiary kin, which is depending upon the closeness of its degree of the closeness we have. So on that basis, this has been categorized. Well, if you see in the functional terms, uh, kinship plays role in not just in defining the individual's role in the social life, but also plays role in the inheritance, authority, succession, marriage, etc. Responsible for performance, it is also responsible for the performance of various jural, economic, and the ritual roles. Also, it is also responsible for production of the goods and services, especially in the agrarian society, like in Punjab, Haryana. So this is a one part of understanding the kinship system. Well, if you see the regional variation, okay, anyways, we'll talk about the regional variation of kinship in India. Very important, but we'll talk this on the next video. Thank you.